Whole Man Academy. Because the world needs strong men. Whole Man Academy is changing the game for men around the world. It's for guys who want to live an epic life of fun and adventure, no matter what. We believe, deep down, all men want to go on their own hero's journey to becoming resilient, confident, fearless, and fulfilled. Listen in to be inspired by guys who don't settle for living a life of mediocrity. This is your call to action and call to adventure. Are you ready?
Okay, so this is the Whole Man Academy podcast, episode 99. My guest today is Jay Reynolds. I've even asked him what I should introduce him as because he says he's a strength and conditioning coach and personal trainer, but I think he's a lot more than that. And he's also now part of the Whole Man Academy team, which we'll come into. But Jay, first of all, how are you and where are you, brother?
I am I'm very well, and I'm in Wicklow in Ireland. So just the next county south of Dublin.
Good. And I've never been to Ireland, which is quite embarrassing, seeing as I've been living here for 43 years and I still haven't managed to make it over there. But what's it like when you come to the UK? I mean, apart from drinking Guinness and stuff like that, which we try to pretend we're kind of down with the Irish, but what's it like when you come over here?
Well, the Guinness doesn't travel well anywhere. I mean, even sometimes I was on one of the islands in Ireland recently, and the Guinness was horrible. So it's not just it's not the whole of Ireland that has the good Guinness. It's only very specific parts. But whenever I go over to England, I'm usually going to major cities. I know there's a lot of lovely countryside in England, which is kind of where I would like to go, but anytime I need to go over to England, or for whatever reason, it's usually the major cities. So, I'm not a big fan of major cities. Just it's a personality thing, hustle and bustle, loads of people around, loads of noise, all that type of stuff. I'd rather be sitting in a field with a couple of cows, But it is what it is. So.
Well, we're gonna get into that because you and I were introduced through a mutual friend, and he felt like so much of your message of how you feel the life that hopefully men should be leading or living would resonate with what we're trying to do here at the Whole Man Academy, and maybe bring back some clarity to masculinity as well. And it's always an interesting one because people have their own views in it. But tell us a little bit about your background of growing up and kind of brings you to where you are now, helping guys with the strength and conditioning, etc.
Well, through my childhood, I was not very academic and not very well behaved. I was always in trouble in school, even from a very, very, very young age. It wasn't something that, happened as a teenager. It was going back as far as, I think I was 5 or 6, getting in trouble, parents actually being called in, stuff like that. And it was just, that carried on all through my schooling. So just school, it wasn't for me. It wasn't necessarily, a bad kid. I never bullied anyone, anything like that. I just wanted to have fun. I just wanted to have a laugh. I just wanted to, make jokes, and had no interest. And I wasn't the only one. But that went all the way up through what we call primary school, which is kind of from 4 till about 11 years of age, and then secondary school, which is kind of 11, 12 to about 17 or so. And it got, progressively worse in secondary school. Then I was just always in trouble, always in detention, always suspended many, many times. I got expelled twice from the same school, which has to be some sort of a record.
Good effort.
But I hope that record still stands. But it wasn't for me. That's not to say I wasn't stupid or anything like that. I just wasn't interested. But anyway, so I left school at about 16, straight into work. I worked for my uncle, who had kind of a fruit and veg business, stuff like that. It was just kind of a natural progression.
Yeah.
Even when I was in school, I used to work for him, on holidays and Christmas and all that type of stuff. But then I worked for him for probably the best part of 10 years, but it wasn't anything that I had any passion for, I wanted to do. It was just a natural progression. It was only meant to last a couple of months until, I found something that I wanted to do. Even when I was in school, I always wanted to be, an athlete or a professional footballer or something like that. Now, it didn't happen. I just, whether I wasn't good enough or I got some really bad injuries as well.
Yeah.
But my plan was, even if I didn't kind of make it, to be in the kind of physical training, maybe coaching, all that type of realm. I knew I didn't want to be sitting in an office or anything similar like that, or working in Tesco's or anything like that. I just want to be.
So what was it like when you left school?
So when I left school, I kind of, I don't want to say I was lost, but it was just, I didn't know kind of what direction I wanted to go in. Now, keep in mind that I left school, quite early for most people. I left school at the earliest legal age. So I left school at 16.
Yeah.
But then, at that age, as, a young lad, and I just gotten a really bad injury, which just put an end to my kind of hopes and dreams of becoming a professional athlete. Maybe I just wasn't good enough anyway, but I got a really, really bad injury.
Yeah.
I broke my leg, I broke my ankle, I tore all my ligaments all in one go. How
did you do that?
Just a tackle in playing football, just a tackle.
Wow.
A fucking ridiculous fucking tackle. But
it's like a car crash.
It was a nightmare. And I had many surgeries. I was absolutely butchered. Many surgeries, and I still have loads of steel plates and rods and screws and everything in there. So it's never been the same since. So I wasn't playing sports then as much. I was 16, 17, earning a few quid when I was working. So most lads at my age, the drink starts coming in, girls start to come in, and I actually started a bit late because the football actually kept me away from all that.
Right.
A lot of my mates who weren't athletic and didn't do any sports, they already had a long drinking career already underway. You know what I mean? So like they started that. I don't know what it's like over in England, but here we start at kind of 13, 14.
Yeah.
But so yeah, girls started to come in, drinks started to come in, and then that's really just snowballed because I was in that kind of, in that culture, in them circles, and then I was just drinking all the time, and then that led to just being doing loads of drugs all the time, all the drugs I could get my hands on, and it was just like that I wasn't the only one. It was just the circles that we were in, and it was like that for maybe kind of 7-8 years, the best part of the decade anyway, until and again, I made no real progress in my life. So it was after my mid-20s, and I could kind of feel 30 kind of creeping up, and I was living at home with my mother. My father wasn't around, even as a kid. He was a musician, so he wasn't around, and he used to work 9 months, 10 months away, sometimes a year away at a time. Might see him for a week or whatever, and then my parents split up when I was very, very young. So I'd know kind of father figure from about 8 or 9 years old all the way up. I'm trying to think, where was I?
So I mean, you were saying about your the drinking and the drugs and what have you, but do you feel like having no father figure kind of made that worse because you didn't have someone there to kind of either guide you or say what the fuck?
Yeah, well, I've been thinking about this, just I do think about that type of stuff a lot, and just kind of think about how my life maybe would have been different. So the way I look at it is, I was getting in trouble in school. Was that because, maybe I didn't have the kind of discipline at home, or maybe even the fear of coming home with, a detention or a suspension or an expulsion or something like that? Maybe things might have been different if, I had a kind of a, father figure or even a strong male figure at home, whoever that may be. Maybe, a bigger brother. I don't have any bigger brothers, but, I kind of often think about that, maybe it wouldn't have made a difference. I don't know, but I had thought about that, but sure, I don't know if you're ever going to get any answers about that. But as I said, I was drinking heavily, doing a lot of drugs, like everyone that I hung around with. I was still working at the time, but you know, just living for the weekend and just going on 2-3 day benders and all this type of stuff. But then I got to an age where I was kind of just got sick of it, and you know, just felt like shit. I looked like shit, and I could just see where this was going, because you know, I know a couple of lads who were a few years older than me, and you know, I was looking at them, and you know, I was kind of thinking, do I want to be that age and, you know, living like they're living, which was essentially the same as how I was living. You know, I was living like, you know, an 18, 19-year-old who, you know, just goes on the piss all the time. But it wasn't 18 and 19. You know, there's a difference there when you're, you know, heading towards 30. You know, I know Jordan Peterson says, like, you can be an idiot when you're 20, but when you can't, when you're 30, then it's not that funny anymore. You know what I mean? Like, nobody expects anything of a 20-year-old because you're only young and you're a kid. But when you're 30, you're not young and you're not a kid. You know what I mean? So I was kind of thinking, like, if I don't change this, I'm going nowhere. And I was always the kind of person that I thought maybe I was just delusional, but I had these, you know, these hopes and dreams of, you know, having an amazing life or whatever. But then I started to kind of analyze things. And I thought, how am I ever supposed to get to that place if I'm doing what I'm doing? My actions do not line up to my, you know, expectations or hopes and dreams or whatever. So, you know, it was just, I don't know if there was one single rock bottom moment, but it was just, you know, heavy sessions after heavy sessions, and just seeing myself, and literally, not you know, metaphorically, but literally seeing myself in the mirror and just seeing, you know, the state of me, and I was just so out of shape. And you know, I'd always been a kind of a fit kid or whatever, but I just looked like shit. I felt like shit. I was always pissed off, and you know, without kind of making light of, you know, depression, I was just down and just felt shit all the time. And I was living at home with my mother, had no money. Like, I remember I tried to screenshot my banking app. It had 0.00 at one stage. Now they don't let you screenshot it for security reasons, but I said, I'm going to let this be a fucking catalyst of change, you know? So
good idea.
That did happen. And I said, I have to change what I'm doing here, because I'm going to end up being a loser, deadbeat. You know, I'm going to be living at home when I'm fucking 30 years of age. Mm-hmm. And we have this thing now in our culture where, you know, it's kind of called Peter Pan syndrome or whatever. I'm sure you've heard of it, but, you know, lads, maybe lads and girls, but we're talking about men here, is that, you know, they're being kind of almost encouraged to live at home, like up till 30 and plus. I mean, legally, you're a full grown, you're an adult when you're 18. Yeah. And you still have guys living at home with their mum or with their mum and dad or whatever, you know, at 30 years of age. You know, it's just not a good way to go. It's not, I don't believe it's, you know, it's not good for the head. It's not good for the, you know, whatever you want to call it, the fucking, the soul. Like, you know, a man needs to be independent. You can't be independent if you're, you know, still living under your mother and father's
your
house.
Mum's still changing
I've said this a couple. Absolutely. And like, even silly things, well, maybe it's not silly, but like, you know, bringing girls home and all, you know, you're sneaking them into your fucking your man's house. You know what I mean? Tell them not to wake your man. You think, what the fuck am I doing here? I'm a fully grown man. Yeah. But yeah, that's just. And I've said this to people, not trying to preach to anyone, but just kind of whatever in conversation. And some of the arguments is, you know, it's expensive. I said, well, it's always expensive to move out, and it's never going to get any cheaper. So what's the options? You want to live at home forever, or just, you know, be resourceful, make it happen, go and live with 1 or 2 or 3 or house share, or just there's always options. Money. Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, you know, you're just fucking reserving yourself to living at home forever. And it's just, it's there's no independence there. And I believe, and I'm not trying to preach to anyone, but I believe that you can't be a man unless you have your independence, you know.
That is one of the big things about, like you said, actually, you know, living at home for longer. It also, I think subconsciously, you're never going to grow up whilst you're still living at home. Now, you know, if you've had to move home because you've had an issue and it's a short-term thing, fine. But if people are just then you're just like, you know, how can you have confidence in yourself if you're living at home and doing that? And I wondered for you then, was around that time when you, as you said, you looked in the mirror and thought, I feel like shit, I look like shit, etc. Like that catalyst for you to kind of go on your own kind of, we call it hero's journey, because I know you've written that your training is aimed at being as strong as you can, but also as fast and as fit and as durable, because you said it's useless for you to be super strong and unable to run 5 or 10 miles. But also if you could run for hours, but it was weak as a 12-year-old girl, that would be pointless as well. So how did you start? Was it just through inspiration from other people, or just your own mindset of saying, I've fucking had enough, it's time to kind of make something happen?
Yeah, I mean, there was a few things. I don't know if there was one rock bottom, but there was one funny one, and I had somehow gotten a date with a girl, right? And she was a very good looking girl, and I said, right, I'm gonna go out and get a nice shirt, or get a nice top, or whatever, a nice jumper or whatever. So I went to River Island, I'm sure you know, and I was in trying on some shirts or whatever, and because I wanted to, look in decent shape, I wanted to get a shirt that, was a fitted shirt. So I went medium, or that was too big, and then I went to small, then that was too big. And I was like, oh, fucking hell, man, I'm going to have to try on an extra small. And I remember thinking the only shirt that fit me was like an extra small. And I go, I'm fucking mortified. You know what I mean? Like that should fit a fucking 12-year-old boy or something. So it was, I think it was that next, it was probably that next weekend or next day maybe that I said, right, I'm just going to fucking, I said, I'm going to go all in on this, because, you know yourself, if you just dabble in something, you never really get anywhere. You know what I mean? I mean, people talk about, you have to balance, and that sounds great, but balance, kind of almost by definition, you're not going to get anywhere. You need to kind of go all in on something if you want to, kind of get there. So I went all in, and I hired a coach, and then that kind of snowballed from there. And then I went and I got my own coaching, qualification. I went back to the college courses and stuff like that. And it just kind of grew from there, really. And then I knew, like, this is what I want to do. And now I kind of knew I wanted to do something like that for years, as I said, but it just, for whatever happened, I got comfortable in other jobs, and I went through other jobs that were just, shitty jobs who I had no passion for. And I spent around the kind of time of the recession, I spent time on the dole and all this type of stuff. So it was just a big blob of the best part of 10 years of just fucking nothing. So I said, I've got catching up to do. So in order to kind of make up the ground, I'm going to have to really go all in on this. And then the training just kind of evolved. I kind of didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew that I needed to put on some muscle, and I wanted to get lean. I wanted to look like somebody who worked out and somebody who was strong. Now, I was never drawn towards the whole bodybuilding thing. Not that there's anything wrong with it for anybody, but it's just not, it's not my style. Yeah. Because I was always growing up playing sports, I would have kind of been more attracted to maybe the CrossFit style of stuff. It's just high intensity. There's a lot of different movement. It's, it's just really, really, really tough workouts. Now, I did a tiny bit of CrossFit, but it's not something that I've done for a long, long time. But it's more, kind of all around athletic, and that's just something I enjoy. Yeah. So that's kind of how the training evolves. Like I said, I wanted to be kind of hybrid or whatever. So be strong, but also be fast, but also be able to run long distances. And I know there's a quite a lot of guys doing that now. It's kind of whatever you'd call functional. I know that word has been bastardized now in the fitness industry, but being actually able to function.
It's, do you know what? The first time I saw the photos of you, I know our friend John, who introduced us, said that your look reminded him of someone that had been in the special forces, or that kind of that mindset, that training. And that was very much myself when I was doing the obstacle course racing. I used to say that my training was to try and make me look or kind of be capable of doing, like you said, carrying sandbags, climbing up ropes, swimming across lakes, running to the top of mountains, and not just being capable of doing one thing. And I know you said you'd kind of enjoyed reading books written by people who have real stories to tell and have this important thing, like have been through shit and have achieved great things in your life. So I guess you kind of therefore was interested in special forces. So what kind of guys was it that you started listening to or kind of paying more attention to?
So there's obviously the guys in the States, the likes of kind of Jocko Willink, David Goggins. Then you've got the guys over in England, Ant Middleton, Billy Billingham, and them guys. And it's actually because Ireland have our own kind of special forces unit, which is the Irish Army Ranger Wing, but they're notoriously hard to find anything out about. There's only one or two books after coming out in the last couple of years, and we have our own version of the SAS Who Dares Wins. But I think the reason I kind of I'm fascinated by all that type of stuff is because it's I wanted to learn about discipline. Now I kind of think sometimes I overthink things, but I think maybe because I was looking for a kind of a male role model or whatever you want to call it, I knew that I needed to be disciplined in order to get what I wanted, not just out of fitness but out of life in general. I thought who better to learn from than the military, and then who are the elite of the military. So went right to the best sources I could find. So there's a lot of lessons in them books. I mean, you've got discipline, you've got organization, you obviously have resilience. So it's all there. And like you said, I like reading stuff from people who actually have story to tell, because in the day and age that we live in, everyone's an expert, but are they really? There's only very few who have actually been through. You get guys who are writing books on discipline and writing books on resilience, but they haven't been through anything. You know what I mean? Whereas if you've been to war, there's not much else in terms of resilience and just hardship, mental and physical and emotional hardship than that. So they're the real deal.
It is interesting because, and I think back to I've interviewed either three or four guys now who've all been in were airborne soldiers or special forces. One of them was a Royal Marine by 17. And I find it so interesting because you can talk about being resilient when you've got a desk job and you get up at 5:30 and it's dark and you go to the gym, like I would be like, oh yeah, I'm resilient. And then you're like, were you under enemy fire, or were you hiding in a ditch for 2 days? And you're like, no, but sometimes my coffee was cold when it turned up at my desk, and I was resilient.
I took a 30-second cold shower, like discipline equals freedom. I get that. Look, I've posted a few things as well myself, and I'm no fucking, I wasn't in the army. Funny enough, when I started to get my shit together, I went to try and enroll for the army, because I just thought, that'd be something that I'd love, because I love. Now I think I'd love it. I've never been there, but I love anything that's really structured. I love being organized and disciplined, and I love the hard physicality of it. So I went to try and enroll, but I was actually too old. First time in my life I've actually been too old for anything. So that went out the window. So
isn't that so? How old were you when you went to do it? So how old would you needed to have been?
I can't remember exactly the age, but I think it's like, I could be wrong, but I think it's 26 or 27 or something like that. It was only after a few years of kind of getting my shit together, and I got super fit, and I just was in really good shape, and I just I thought that'd be a great challenge, and I just thought that'd be a great story to tell my future kids, and have the picture on the mantelpiece, and to have said that you have served your country in some capacity. I think it'd be a great kind of checkbox for a man to be able to say, but it wasn't meant to be. So
well, it's unfortunately, therefore I realized I've missed my chance as well, so I was obviously ready to sign up and get my head shaved, but I guess I just have to stay at home with the chickens and kind of deal with that and my 30-second cold showers. But
I was just going to say that I'm doing the cold shower, so it's the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's just the same. It's just the same. Yeah. Well, let's talk about, because Yeah, so you were introduced to me through a mutual friend, and what he saw was that our online course, which was about giving a guy more energy, would be beautifully complemented for the guys that wanted to take the next step to really kind of optimize their body and call it getting lean, call it getting shredded, whatever it is, and having that kind of, you know, might say warrior physique. And it's called the Apex Predator course, and Apex meaning the guy that strives to be at his peak, hence the term Apex. But give us kind of a, you know, give us a kind of a rundown of why you created the course and what kind of stuff a guy would get out of it.
Well, as you said, it's in the realm of optimization. You know, I mean, beginners are will get a lot from this course, but so will intermediate and advanced. I know that's kind of it suits everybody, but because it's based on, you know, human biology, you know, everybody can get something for it. So the beginners will, you know, they'll start to see unbelievable results in terms of if you're coming from nothing to doing this, you know, the results are going to be night and day. But then if you're a seasoned athlete, this is, you know, going to skyrocket your athletic performance. And where it kind of came about was that when I started to get my shit together, you know, I started to go to the gym, and I knew nothing at this stage. You know, I was just going and doing, you know, kind of the generic stuff, what I thought I should do, which is not a bad place to start. You know, you want to start somewhere and get momentum. But when, you know, I was training for a while, and, you know, it was a couple of years anyway, and, you know, I'm not gonna lie, I did see some results. You know, I had lost the little beer belly, and I was feeling generally better, but I still wasn't feeling great. And an example was that when I was in work, and it was about lunchtime, it was 12 or 1 o'clock in the day, I was falling asleep in traffic lights. I remember, and and I wasn't like, you know, on the piss in the weekend or any of the type of stuff. You know, everything was as, you know, as I should have been doing, but I was just kind of thinking something isn't right here. You know, I was, you know, kind of generally young guy. I'm not 50, 60, 70 years of age. I was falling asleep at lunchtime during the day. So whatever, I started to, you know, do more research and read more stuff, because I became very interested in this, and it became, you know, an obsession for a long time. But I kind of quickly found out that, you know, what I was doing, while it was way better than your standard Western American, whatever type of diet and drinking and smoking, there was still a lot of work to do in terms of optimization, because and I'm not sure if, you know, because what I'm trying to say is that I may have destroyed my body through 7-8 years of just eating
hitting it hard.
Fast. Sometimes I'd have fast food twice a day, drinking, smoking, everything I said, taking loads of drugs, all this type of stuff. So I may have destroyed my body, because when I started to, you know, find out about you know, hormone optimization and good health and digestion and all that more kind of complex stuff, which you don't really get in a kind of beginner's course or whatever, because it is slightly higher level. You know, it's not just your, you know, calories in versus calories out, which, you know, obviously has its place. Weight loss is calories in, is calories out. I'm not denying that. But I was then, you know, tested. I got a full kind of hormone panel done, full nutrient profile done, just a full kind of what do you call it, like an MOT, like a car test, where you just put your car into the diagnostics and it all comes up, you get a result. So we got that done, and there was a lot of red flags there. There was really low certain nutrients that were really, really low, and, you know, I was doing my best to eat healthy foods, you know, your vegetables, and, you know, I was getting my protein in and all this type of stuff, but also hormones. Testosterone was really, really low. You know, there was some inflammation there, and it could have been one thing, or it could have been an accumulation of these things. I don't know, but from then I went on to try to, you know, optimize things. So specific nutrients in specific foods, for specific reasons, you know, to get my testosterone up, because like I said, I was kind of somewhere probably around 30 years of age, which is, you know, you should be pretty much at your prime as a young man, you know. So I was low in testosterone. Now, like I said, that might have been genetic, or it might have been the fact that I was fucking a pisshead for the best part of 10 years. Who knows? But you know, that's one of the reasons why, you know, no matter how hard I trained, because I genuinely loved hard training. Sometimes I was training twice a day, which probably wasn't a good thing looking back in hindsight, but nothing I was doing. I was raising my calories, trying to pump the weights. And I got to a point where I just couldn't break through anymore. And I wasn't putting on any sort of noticeable or substantial amount of muscle. Now, like I said, I'm not a bodybuilder now, but I remember looking at myself in the mirror and, being very kind of honest or self-critical. I just didn't look like somebody who'd been training for a few years. I looked like somebody who just walked into a gym pretty much.
Yeah.
But so then I, went on a kind of mission or journey or whatever you want to call it to try and get my testosterone up, and kind of bring my the little bits of kind of systemic inflammation down, and then optimizing things like insulin sensitivity, all that type of stuff. I know this might be a bit high level for some people, but I started to really see proper results then, and what was funny was what was required in order for me to do that was so against the kind of the mainstream type of advice or conventional wisdom.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a bit, that doesn't sound right. It sounds totally against what I've learned for the past couple of years. But then I kind of, had to step in into my own head and say, right, well, what you've been doing hasn't gotten the results that you want. So you need to change something. So I said, right, I'm just going to go, again, I'll go all in on this and see what happens. And look, if it doesn't work, well, then I can just go back to what I was doing.
Yeah.
So I did. I went all in and, I changed my diet totally to what it was. And it was, like I said, it was healthy. It was your kind of, your general kind of health, fitness type diet. And it was without sounding, sounding like I'm lying, but it was within a matter of weeks where I started to really see some changes. Now, I didn't blow up in a matter of a couple of weeks, but I started to feel much better. Energy levels went through the roof, which then made my training a lot better. I started to get stronger, whereas before I just, no matter what type of kind of periodization I did or rep range I did or any of that type of stuff, I just couldn't break through it. Joints were a big thing. I was getting niggly injuries, but I just thought, well, it's just part and parcel of the game. It's part and parcel of training. But, I now know that can be, a sign of some little bits of inflammation or whatever in there. So I turned from where I was, and everything just skyrocketed. Performance went through the roof, strength went through the roof. Even my kind of anaerobic capacity, my cardiovascular, my recovery got much quicker, which then allowed me to train more often or at a higher level.
Yeah.
But funnily enough, now I train less than I did back then, and I'm getting better results. So it is true. It's truly in the realm of optimization. It's like I said, it's not just your kind of calories in versus calories out. Like I said, calories do count before anybody kind of shouts at me or whatever. There's no getting around that, but it's in the realm of optimization. And I think, because I did it with myself, which is, N equals 1, it's what he one example. But then I started to do it with, clients. I started to do it with, online clients, in-person clients, and the results were the same, if not better in some ways, because not everybody has the kind of the discipline. I was super disciplined because I loved it, so it was kind of easy for me. I loved training and I loved the diet, what I was doing. So I thought, well, it's well and good for me to get these results, but what about somebody else? Somebody who has a full-time job, family's busy, and just doesn't have the same enthusiasm for training or diet as I do. And the results were the same, like I said, if not better in some ways. We had guys who have always been kind of chubby guys, carrying a little bit of extra timber. Never in their wildest dreams did they think that they'd ever have a six-pack. And, within a matter of, I think it was kind of about 13, 14 weeks, you could bring a guy from who was, like I said, always chubby throughout his childhood, to now, has a six-pack and has the defined shoulders and all this type of stuff. Looks like a guy who's been training for years. So there's, it's we have repeated the process as well, which means that, you know, there is something to it. You know, it does work. So yeah, it's been good.
I've seen some, I mean, we've, you know, because we'd been put together, I did kind of the obvious thing of having a look to see what results you'd got. And, you know, you've shown me the results of some of the guys. And what it linked to me was also, it's not just about having a six pack. It's about the confidence it gives you in being proud of your own body. And I remember talking, well, I'm trying to think who it was I was talking to who said, the amount of guys who don't feel comfortable, like taking their top off if they, you know, let's say we're at the beach or they're swimming with their kids and what have you. And that's what I see with a lot of guys, especially as they get past their 20s into their 30s and 40s, that might be sitting at a desk for 8 or 10 hours a day, you know, and not quite eating the right things. And the frustration for me is when they're kind of making some effort, but then they're being led down the wrong path by the you know, the magazines that they read and what have you. So I always think it's great when you've got, like you have the examples. And one of the things you said, which I totally resonated with, you said it's a sad thing for a man to go through his life without ever experiencing his true physical peak. What a waste. And that's what I get as well, because I think so many men are now just, especially when they reach their 30s, 40s and above, just settle for where they are, but they're probably not pushing themselves and challenging themselves. So how do you kind of help a guy try to get towards his true physical peak?
Yeah, well, it is, you know, I think it's a very sad thing because, you know, obviously the younger you are, the better chance you have of being in great shape, because everything is or should be, you know, just, you know, firing on all cylinders or whatever. And just as people get older, natural progression, or natural maybe regression or whatever, but you know, things start to slow down and it does get harder. It's not impossible. You know, I'm a testament to that. You know, I'm 35 years of age and I'm in better shape than most lads 20, 25 years of age, you know. And it didn't happen for me until, you know, later on. And I'm doing it with other guys as well. But yeah, I mean, I think that's why I think this approach, and I kind of I don't like to call it my approach, because it's not necessarily something like, I'm not a researcher, I'm not a scientist, I'm not in a lab doing all this. What I've done is just tried loads of things over the years, tried to go to the best experts that I could find. You know, I've hired them, I've worked with them, I've paid a lot of money to work with these guys. You know, sat through hours of seminars and you know, podcasts and in-person seminars and all this type of stuff, and just pieced it together, and trying to just mash all the best stuff together. So it's not necessarily my method, it's, you know, just I kind of just mashed it all together. But that's what I think really works well for, especially, I don't want to call it, because none of us on this, you know, me, I'm not old, you're not old, and none of the guys I train would be consider themselves old, you know. But we're not 18, 19 anymore.
Well, that's a good reminder, though, because so many guys that maybe are listening to this, it might be that in your 20s you're not that interested in that, you kind of your body composition, but like you said, with energy levels linking to as much anything else, it's a good reminder that you don't have to be 20s, you know, in your 20s to be able to achieve this. It can be guys that are in their 30s and 40s who make these changes, and, you know, yes, you have to put in some hard work, unsurprisingly, but it is achievable.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, so many guys are struggling badly now because just the way the world has gone, you know. And it's not there's no violins here or whatever, you know. Obviously the times we live in now are great, the technology and convenience and all that type of stuff, but there is negatives that come with that. And that's obvious in what we're seeing, you know, obesity, you know, all the health problems, you know, all the even things like the depression and the suicide and all this type of stuff. It doesn't, you know, it didn't make sense. I kind of started to think about it, and I thought that, you know, we live in these times that are just, you know, kind of unbelievable when you think of, you know, all through history, and history was always, you know, mostly a struggle. And now we live in these times with just, you know, such convenience and technology, and everything's at the click of the finger. And there's, you know, we don't have to go out and hunt our food and all this type of stuff. So everything is so easy and everything's so great. And we've central heating and we've cars and everything. But yet, especially in the male population, depression and suicide has never been higher. So how does that make sense, that we have all this great stuff that we never had, all these convenience that, you know, people would have killed for down through history, now we're more depressed, more suicidal than ever? It just, something is going wrong here. And it's just because I love anthropology and I love evolution, you know, evolutionary biology and evolutionary psychology as well. But it's kind of obvious when you know all that stuff. It just, it's not the natural state for a man or humans in general to be living in, to be sitting down in that same hunched over position for 8 hours a day. Like, I've seen it in some guys that I know. Like, I knew them from school, and they were, you know, full of life and, you know, full of buzz and whatever. And they had, you know, all these, some of them have great dreams and they had great potential. Maybe they were great with their, you know, metalwork or woodwork or whatever. And you see them now 15, 20 years later, and their life, you know, the soul has been sucked out of them because they're just working in these jobs that they think they like, but it's obvious that they don't, because they hate Mondays and all this type of stuff. I know we're getting off in a different kind of
No, you're right. We're going down the right track. Yep.
Yeah. But it's kind of sad to see. But of course, you know, they're getting the wage packet, they're getting the benefits. So it's kind of like, you know, I can't turn it down. But, you know, you're kind of like, well, how much are you willing to kind of sell your kind of soul for? Because, you know, the younger you are, the better kind of it is to go and do something you love, I suppose.
Yeah.
Now I know that's a totally separate tangent from what we're talking about, but it all kind of ties in together. But like I said, there's a lot of guys who are struggling, and you know, there is guys obviously who say that they, you know, they want to get their shit together, and that's all well and good, and then, you know, they go and they try some stuff and it just doesn't work for them, or they can't make it work. You know, everybody has different kind of you know, kind of dietary preferences, and everybody's coming from different backgrounds. You know, I've seen guys who, you know, who have never been in the gym and can walk past the gym and put on fucking 5 kilos of muscle. You know, they're just genetically, whether it's their parents, you know, maybe their testosterone is just genetically high. And then I've seen guys who have done everything they can possibly do, bar take anabolic fucking steroids, and they just cannot for the life of them put on a kilo of muscle, you know. So
which must be so frustrating.
I mean, you get some of the hardest working guys look the shittest, you know what I mean? Which is kind of, I don't know if that's Murphy's Law or whatever, but you know, that's why I like my approach. That's why I do it. But, you know, it gets into things a bit deeper, as opposed to just, you know, giving somebody a calorie and a macro plan and kind of off you go.
Yeah.
You know, like I said, it can work for a lot of people, but it depends on your history. I don't know. It didn't really work for me in terms of, you know, the results that I wanted. It was better than what I was doing, of course, but anything is better than that, you know. But you know, so there is a lot of guys who are struggling. I mean, the testosterone is declining at a rate never before seen in history. That's a statistical fact. That's not something I've made up.
Yeah.
Fertility has declined by 50% in the last 50 years. Basic strength, like even grip strength, which is a good marker of you know, all of our body strength, and even longevity in life, you know, that has gone way down as well. So while we have all these convenience, all these technology, you know, it has a major negative effect as well. And, you know, like I said, we're seeing that testosterone, fertility, suicide, depression, all that stuff. So there's a lot going wrong.
You said about testosterone, and you know, I've learned more and more about that. I mean, I couldn't believe the declining rates in testosterone. When I first saw it, I kind of felt like I needed to double check it. And my, you know, partner Emma had kind of spoken about it and written about it as well. And you just can't believe, you know, it's not like it's a little bit of a change. As you said, it's a massive percentage drop. And it is by design, because it is our lifestyles. You know, it's what people are eating, it's what they're drinking, it's the what they're surrounding themselves with. And also you'd say the sedentary lifestyle. But what about yourself with your food? Because I know, you know, food is such a big part of our life. And it's always sad when I now see men that think they're saving the world by saying, oh, I'm not going to eat any meat and I'll just eat vegetables. And I'm like, well, you'll end up with health problems, likely because you'll be missing out on important stuff. Now, I see on your Instagram that you'll be sharing the love of, you know, a good quality steak, just like I would. I used to eat a nice good steak and some eggs in the morning and some spinach for breakfast or something like that. So how much of it is for you the kind of the diet that you're having as well?
Well, obviously diet is a huge, you know, because like I said, when I got that kind of test done, there was, you know, there was deficiencies there. There was, you know, B12, vitamin D. I can't even remember now. There was zinc. Yeah. I mean, there's, if you get like, if you kind of put all your biases or whatever aside, and you know, get purely objective about it, you know, and only, you know, look at food in terms of nutrients. Forget where the actual food comes from. So look at it in terms of nutrients. That will guide you in the right path. Because when you talk about red meat there, people always talk about superfoods. You know, you see this term kind of thrown around, superfood, with a picture of like goji berry or kale or something like that. Now that looks good on an Instagram, but if you go, okay, well, in terms of nutrients, because we're going to, you know, define what actually makes a food a superfood. Surely we've got to talk about nutrients. There's kind of nothing really else to talk about. You can talk about bioavailability, which kind of just means, you know, of those nutrients, how many, or, you know, of those nutrients, can we absorb them? But if you're talking about nutrients, micronutrients, vitamins and minerals, which are kind of the pillars for health, nothing comes close to red meat. Now that goes totally against today's conventional wisdom, but not conventional wisdom in terms of the last million years of evolution. You know, nothing comes close in terms of micronutrients for red meat. A human being can live on red meat alone, nothing else, because everything is in there, and not just survive, but actually thrive. You can't do that on any other food. So, and people think, you know, I don't know. People, I get the arguments, not often, but I do get them, that, you know, you hate animals and stuff like that. That's just totally bullshit. But I can't remember what I was going to say. In terms of like red meat, human beings have been eating red meat since dawn of mankind, even before we were, you know, Homo sapiens. I can't remember what was before, Homo habilis or Homo erectus or whatever. But we've been eating red meat since then. And by avoiding red meat, you are actively avoiding all of the most important micronutrients that the human body needs. So again, this is not an ideology. This is not my opinion. This is scientific fact. If you get objective and you look at all the micronutrients in foods and the micronutrients that a human being needs, you know, like I said, zinc, iron, all the essential amino acids. There's a million different, well, it's not a million, but there's a lot of different micronutrients. Everything is in there. So by avoiding it, you're saying, I'm going to try and be as healthy as I can by avoiding the most healthy food that we have on the planet. It just doesn't make sense. And that's where the kind of the vegan kind of thing just doesn't add up. Now, I'm not here to bash anyone. I used to bash people, because I used to get real wound up about it, but now, you know, not so much. But just from an objective point of view, I get the argument. I get the vegan argument, the moral argument, and it's a what's the word? It's a likable argument. Now, it doesn't hold water in terms of, you know, animal welfare and stuff like that. That's a talk for another day. But in terms of health, because you're starting to see the vegan thing take off a bit more now. It's not taking off nearly as much as people think it is. It's still a tiny percent of the population. But there, you know, there's a lot of people who are, you know, obviously invested in whatever, trying to push this on.
Well, there's a big push for it. There's a lot of money involved in it, isn't there? So,
of course.
You know, you see the companies now that are trying to. It always makes me laugh when these companies are trying to replicate meat by basically creating a synthetic version of it. and then people end up eating it, and actually they're just desperate to eat the real thing, but they're, you know, trying to feel like they're saving the planet. And you're like, you know, if you're not eating real food, there's going to be some consequences.
Of course, because like, you know, the human body has been evolved over hundreds of thousands and millions of years. You know, only since really the beginning of the 1900s have ultra processed foods started to come in. So, you know, that's like, I don't know, that's like giving your dog rat poison or something. It's just not meant to be in that body, you know. It's like putting toilet bleach in your car. You know, just because, you know, you can put it, just because you can put it in doesn't mean it should go in. You know, it doesn't have all the properties that it needs in order to make the engine work, you know. And this is obvious what we're seeing, you know. And I suppose most people aren't going to see it because it's not in the mainstream. But if you're in the kind of industry and you like this type of stuff, it's very easy to see. You know, there's a million different studies out there, and you know, when you see the studies about red meat causing cancer and causing all types of stuff, and they put it on the headlines, when you delve deeper into these studies, they're just ridiculous. They're nonsense. You know, they're not scientific at all. You know, they don't hold any real credible water in any sort of scientific regard at all. But, you know, most people aren't going to see that because they're not going to kind of get in and check it out. And that's understandable. But, you know, it's in the mainstream. So, we wrote about this.
We wrote about this the other day because, you know, so much of what people eat or think or how they act is created by what they're consuming, and be it magazines and programs and what have you. And I do wonder, even in this last kind of year or two, where you look around the people you're taking orders from. And I remember you'd written on your Instagram, the price of greatness is responsibility. I feel it's selfish to be weak, because if you can't look after yourself, then someone else has to do it. And I know you touched on that earlier, but I see that with so many men now looking at leaders around the world and, you know, taking orders. And you wonder whether testosterone levels have affected, because you look around and go, where are the real strong leaders? And therefore that relates to me down to the young men of today in their teens and in their 20s. Like, who do they have to look up to say, that's who I want to follow in the footsteps of?
Yeah. I mean, you know, I'm not an expert in politics or anything like that, but, you know, it's very, very obvious that there's very, very weak leadership at the top. And a really easy example of this is that I have never heard any one of these politicians come out and said, you know, that was either our fault or that was my fault, I made a mistake. And that's the first thing of leadership, is taking ownership of more so the bad stuff that happens. If you're leading a team and, you know, something good happens, you put that ownership on the team. You know, you don't take ownership of that win. You give it to the team. Yeah. If something bad happens, you take owner of that leadership. You know, the buck stops with you. It's like a coach on a football team. You know, if results aren't going the right way, a good manager, a good coach will step up and he'll take ownership for that. And I've never, like I said, I'm not an expert in politics, and I try to avoid it as much as I can because it's all just fucking nonsense. But you know, I haven't heard any, especially, I don't know what it's like in other areas of the world, but in the Western kind of world, Western countries, you know, there's always going to be mistakes made, and it'd be stupid to expect somebody to never make mistakes. Especially in such a high position, which obviously would be a hard position for anybody. But I've never heard of any of them, you know, whether it's a president, the prime minister, or even our own kind of Taoiseach or whatever, come out and said, you know what, we fucked up there. You know, that was, I made the wrong call, or we made the wrong call. This is what we're going to do to fix it, you know, and ever not leading any, you know, their people or whatever you want to call them in the right direction. You know, they always pass the buck. I've seen this a few times, and they've been. I know, because
Never
I know.
answer a question.
Yeah, and it doesn't even have to be, you know, a prime minister or whatever. Even the head of a certain what's the word? It's not a, you know, we have the health, something, the NHS kind of,
Like health minister,
I can't remember what it is in Ireland. But there was a big fuck up, a big scandal, and on the face of it, it looked like it was just you know, the leader, which is a guy called Tony Houlihan. He made a wrong decision, whether he knowingly made it or he made it by mistake, whatever. But it came out, and he was asked, because a lot of people suffered. It was something to do with female smear tests or something, and people died and women died, and the reporter asked, do you apologize for this? And even if it wasn't his fault, even if he didn't make that decision, but somebody down the chain made that decision, he should have took ownership for it, because he was the head at the time, you know, and whatever, he should have took ownership. But look, you know, I'm not a politician, I'm not a CEO, whatever, but this is kind of just what I see. But you're right with what you say in terms of, you know, kids growing up nowadays, who have they got to kind of look up to, and who have they got to emulate, especially the kids growing up without a father at home, you know? Because I love all this type of stuff, and it's not just because of how I grew up. Well, maybe it is, I don't know, but I'm fascinated by it anyway, of the role of the father in the home. You know, I'm reading a lot of stuff for a guy called Warren Farrell. He's a PhD, Dr. Warren Farrell.
Right.
And he talks a lot about this. And he was a staunch feminist back in the day. You know, he was elected to the National Organization of Women in America 3 times in a row, the only male ever to be on that board. But now he is kind of really researching the effects of fatherless homes. Yeah. And it's mind-blowing, you know. I mean, the statistics are huge. A kid who grows up with especially a boy who grows up with no father in the home, I don't know what the numbers are, but it's silly numbers, are way more likely to be incarcerated, in jail, drug problems, just way less chance of success, school problems, you know, young pregnancies, homeless, alcoholism, all this type of stuff. So it's crazy. So there is a lack of strong male leadership, and it's obvious what we're seeing as well. We're seeing this huge thing against men, you know, which is, you know, it's not, everyone loses when that happens, you know, when you're demonizing men as a whole. You know, we're not talking about that, because they're not talking about bad men, they're talking about men as a whole. And when you demonize men as a whole, everybody loses. Men lose, women lose, and then the children lose as well.
That's a really good point. I mean, a couple of points that we could go off on there, but I know the talk, I was on a panel of men at a all women's event like 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago now. And, you know, we spoke about the importance of male leadership, and that you can have just how important it is for guys, especially young ones, to have either mentors, or if that father figure isn't around, some strong leadership. And I know I've said before on the podcast, you know, some of my friends, by their own admittance, will be like, they felt because they either didn't have a dad around, or they did have a dad around and he was fucking useless, and therefore they didn't have that kind of guiding arm around them. And several of those then, thankfully, a bit later in life, found a mentor through their gym or through boxing or business or what have you. So that's always one of the big things for me. I'm lucky that my dad was, you know, is still around and was great for me and has always helped me. But there's a lot of the guys I see who found that quite hard. But now I want to talk about immune system, because I know you'd said in one of your Instagram stories, you know, don't be another obsessive compulsive germaphobe, like get some mud on your hands. And even we encourage our kids to get out and get in the dirt because it's so important. So, you know, what's your thoughts on that at the moment?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's just really basic kind of, I don't know if biology is the right term, like I'm not an expert at that type of stuff, but, you know, if you just if you watch kids, they will naturally, you know, just pick up dirt. And this has been going on for, again, because I want to, whenever I talk about something, I want to know that there is at least some truth to it, because somebody can come in and go, you know, that's bollocks, and here's why. And then I haven't got a leg to stand on, you know. So before I kind of make a claim or whatever, I do a little bit of research at least. But you know, this is any kind of, I don't know if it's a virologist or whatever, but I remember reading and listening to a guy, and he was saying this is basic stuff, because the children, they pick up, you know, now they don't do this consciously, but they pick up the dirt and the muck, because it's all the microbiomes or all the microorganisms in the muck, in the muck and the dirt, and they have to be exposed to that stuff in order for the immune system to be able to then you know, grow and adapt, you know, because it's like, if you put a kid, you're wrapped in not cotton wool, in cling film, and put him in a surgical room that's disinfected, and then let him out into the real world, well, then a common cold is going to just kill him, you know, because he hasn't built up the immune system. And that's why you know, kids do that. I remember through this, you know, obviously immunity came up through the whole pandemic, but I remember going for a walk, and I seen a mother and a child, and the child was picking up rocks. I think it was a little boy, maybe 3, 4, 5 years of age, and he was picking up rocks and throwing them around, whatever. And the mother runs over to him, to put them down, put them dirty rocks down, and you know, she's wiping his hands with all this type of stuff. And I just thought, fucking hell, like, you are setting him up for failure. You know,
this is such a big thing where you know, unfortunately, people end up you know, sanitizing their kids within an inch of their life, and they realize that, you know, even during the 2 years of lockdown, or year and a half, or whatever it was, the importance of not just kids but people being around others, so you know, germs can circulate, and that's how your immune system develops and stays strong and builds, as opposed to being like, right, I'll just stay and sanitize my balls every day, and you know, and then when I go out, they think they're going to be fine. So it's another one for, it's a bit like with grounding. I always encourage guys, firstly, to get out into nature, secondly, to embrace the dirt, and you know, get your shoes and socks off, and if it's then in woodland or on the ground or whatever it is, you know, don't always have I read a study, God, it was about 6-7 months ago, didn't bother to look into it, but I found it very interesting, where they said that the correlation between increased illnesses and the development of rubber-soled shoes in America. And again, I just found that really interesting, and it's not like it would be a huge surprise that suddenly you're disconnected from the earth. So it's something we'll cover. But all right, well, I've got 2 questions to tie you up with the last one, which number one is, what's the craziest night out you've ever had?
I can't remember. But the craziest night out, my God, there's so many. I don't know, because I don't know who's going to watch this. You know what I mean? I don't know what to say now. All my mates, most of my mates would know. But yeah, I had a few good ones in Manchester, actually. I had a few good ones, because I used to go over to watch the football, and whenever we were in a nightclub, and I don't know if this is the best one, but it's a funny story. Me and one of my mates were over there, and we were in a nightclub, whatever, and we're drinking till, must have been 2 or 3 in the morning, but place is closed, but we wanted to keep going. So we went to a policeman, and we were saying, is there any place still open? And he goes, yeah, down there, lads, down there, just straight down there and to the left-hand side. So anyway, went in, we were standing there, fucking looking around, and it was fucking staunch gay bar, you know, the gayest of the gay bar, right? So I said, that fucking policeman knew what he was doing. So we went down there anyway, and the two of us, you know, we're just awkward, you know, because I've never been in a gay bar before, but it was the only place open anyway. Yeah. So the two of us standing there, and we must have looked really, really awkward, because
out of place.
You know, a couple of girls came over to us, and whatever, they were chatting away, and we were kind of like, we were going, now how'd you know that we're not gay? And she goes, it's obvious that you're not gay. Look at you, you're just standing there like nearly back to back, asking like, you know, because like again, we didn't know, and I'm not trying to offend anyone, but I remember, oh, I need to go to the toilet, man. I need to go to the toilet. You know, I'm not going on my own because I didn't know what the fuck happened around in them areas, you know. So it was just a funny one. But I had another couple of Manchester as well, where we were going back to I went over with a gang of lads, and we're going back to the hotel room then after. We're all walking down the corridor, and then a door opens to a room, and then there's some woman standing there in like suspenders and a corset, and we were about mid-20s, and she was probably 40, mid-40s. But she called us in anyway, so I went in, and then her husband was fucking, we had a lot of points on board, so I didn't give a bollocks at this stage. So I went in, and I didn't know what was going to happen, what was meant to happen anyway, but I just went in, because I thought she might have a bottle of wine there or something. So I went in, and her husband is sitting there, stark naked, on the bed. And anyway, he wanted me to give her one, but I didn't know what was going on. I'd never been in that position before.
It's one of these, you're just like, it
was just too weird. Like, it was just her. I would be like, grand, happy days. But fucking husband sitting there, he's big enough lad as well. I touch her now, he's gonna fucking knock the bollocks out of him.
This is why I love talking to guys about, you know, what their random nights out, because it's usually the most random nights are the most fun ones, because you can't plan a really good night out, you know. And all of mine have been ones where you've woken up somewhere and you're like, how have I got here? And this wasn't what I intended to do. So it's always good. And the more of these guys I speak to on podcasts, the more interesting stories come up. But I'm gonna let you go, because I've already taken up an hour of your time. But yeah, what we're obviously going to have soon is the course going on our email list for any of the guys. And at some point, we want to sort out where you can be doing some group coaching as well. So for the guys that are listening, look out for that on our e-letter. And what's your plan for the rest of the evening?
Plan for the rest of the evening now is just to just cook some dinner, get organized, and just kind of ready for tomorrow. Then, you know, that's all I do. You know, don't live a very definitely not extravagant anyway, but you know, just organized. And so I'm going to cook a nice big steak now, as usual, every single night. You know, there's no limit to the amount of red meat that I can eat. So it's not that's something I hear as well. You know, if I want to, I think we should all stop eating, you know, more. I think we should all stop eating red meat. Well, again, you know, why? You know, you're avoiding all of the best foods you can eat. But no, I think that's what I'm going to do for the rest of the night.
I think that's fair enough. And as a proper meat eater myself, I would find it very hard or I'd find it impossible to give that up. But what I always say is, I know we haven't met in person yet, but at some point I'm sure we will. And I think the best thing to do at that point will be to go and find someone that does a really good grass-fed steak and some spinach or mushrooms and eggs or something, and tuck into it basically. But and also have a man hug, as we always say. But Jay, I appreciate all your time, and we will speak to you soon on the pod.
Happy days. Thanks, Ant. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, mate.
Thanks for listening. Remember to sign up to our game-changing weekly e-letter that's read by men around the world. Sign up at wholemanacademy.com/movement. Until next time.